Alright boys, in today's video we're going to be talking about Sigurd and whether or not he is worth summoning for. Forgive the new kind of format for just this video. I'm going to see if recording this way actually makes the mic sound a little bit better, and if it does then I might proceed this way for the remainder of my vacation. So just forgive it, just looking a little bit different and maybe just looking at the page and kind of going over how good the servant is in this way as opposed to the normal videos, right? I promise by at least August 6th everything will be back to normal, but for right now I'm doing a lot of experimenting to see what actually works, and I think from the little bit of test I've done that this sounds a little bit better. But regardless, you guys aren't here for all that and all my technical issues. You guys are here to know whether or not you should be summoning for Sigurd. Now I feel like it's really easy for me to just say no, you should not be summoning for Sigurd. Like, he's not a bad servant, as we'll get into today, but he's kind of like dated, I suppose, or just not quite up to snuff, right? He can do a lot of damage, but he's being held back in a lot of ways. In fact, even with a very recent buff that he received over on the JP version of the game, even then they're still kind of holding him back, and I think he's going to be one of those servants kind of like MHX, where he's going to need to have all of his skills and NP upgraded, and then he'll be a good servant, because as of right now, even on JP, he's just, I don't know, not really up to snuff when it comes to the current metagame, but the guy can do a lot of damage, and let's kind of get into that in today's video. So we're going to go ahead and start off by looking at his hits, as we always do, and as you guys can see, my man is rocking a double buster, double art, single quick card deck. This is good. I do like this for buster service because it does give them access to 2 arts cards, which makes it really easy, or at least easier, to refund their NP, because, well, they're rocking the double arts cards, and it makes it a little easier to get those crits on those arts cards to refund their own NP. And Sigurd is rocking a modest 0.62% NP gain stat, not the highest, but not bad by any stretch of the imagination, especially if you can get some crits with those arts cards that he is packing right there, because they do have 3 hits on him, which is very, very strong. He also is rocking that 5-hit extra attack, which obviously is supremely powerful. You guys know, but if you don't, let me tell you, the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars NP and does big boy damage, but unfortunately for Sigurd, because his natural NP gain and his natural star gen aren't the highest, they're more on the average side, he's really not going to be able to take advantage of that extra attack unless you level up the append skill for it, which I don't know if that's worth it for Sigurd. I think you just go for the battery to help out the little NP thing that he's got going on. But with all that being said, let's actually just go ahead and move over to the skills, because the skills are what pay the bills for the servants. Now, looking over at skill 1 here, you can see that he has a very, very strong crit damage skill, giving himself 100% crit damage for 3 attacks for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown, which is not bad. Like, that level of crit damage is absolutely insane. Your Sigurd, for those 3 attacks, is going to choke slam somebody into the ground. The problem is that that's all it does, right? In modern FGO, right, how you kind of build your skills is that you want them to have a numerous amount of just really good effects tying into it, and you would also prefer if this came with some star weight, or maybe drop some stars for Sigurd, or gave him stars per turn, things along those lines, right? You would want it to have additional effects, and while this effect in and of itself is good, the fact that this is all he's able to do is kind of what holds Sigurd back. And you'll notice that on a lot of his other skills is that the effects are not bad, it's just he's not really doing a whole lot. In fact, he's really just kind of a very, very basic bungus beat stick, right? So this is not bad, right? Don't let anybody tell you that 100% crit damage for even just 3 attacks is bad. It is good, it's just there's nothing else here, right? And the fact that it just kind of limits how good Sigurd can actually be. Then we even move over to his second skill, and it's very, very similar. He's only getting a 50% buster buff for 1 turn, and then he's giving himself a guts that lasts for 3 turns on a 7-turn cooldown. Now, in and of itself, this isn't a bad skill. The problem, though, is that this kind of makes Sigurd a very burst type servant, and the problem is that we don't really have as much use for burst servants. Now, they're still useful. You could still find some use for your servants that can just do 1 turn of big damage, but nowadays a lot of the boss fights are getting harder. They're getting longer with all of the break bars they have, and it just being able to do a lot of damage in one turn is not as good as it used to be in like year 1 and like the beginning of year 2, right? The fights are starting to evolve as the game goes on, and so you want those servants that can be consistently good or even get better as the fight goes on. And this unfortunately kind of limits Sigurd in a way, because I mean, this is very good on a turn that you fire your NP, because you can absolutely get a lot of damage on that. And then this is not bad survivability. In fact, this is a better version, I would argue, than like, say, the Jack, Raiko, or Jolter method of survivability, where their mana burst is tied to like their invincibility or dodge. At least this is a Guts that lasts for 3 turns, so like it's not wasted if you don't proc it that turn. That's not even the bad part, it's just the fact that like it really limits him to only being able to do damage for 1 turn. Now, they did try to fix this a little bit on JP, as you'll see right here, because they lowered the cooldown to help him get this a little bit more consistently, and they gave him 3 instances of the Buster buff instead of just 1 turn straight up. Now, you can kind of spread this out, because you could say fire an NP on turns 1, 2, and 3, and you spread out the damage to kind of make your Sigurd kind of like take that Buster buff and stretch out its utility. But the problem is that you can also waste it, because you could quite easily waste that all in 1 turn doing like your NP, which is a Buster card, and then your 2 other Buster cards. And now you kind of have the same problem as this, where like you expended all of your damage in 1 turn. It's not super likely, because you guys know if you've played FGO, you're probably going to be ending up with like Sigurd's Quick and Arts card on the turn that you proc this, right? And then the next turn you'll probably get his 2 Buster cards. So then that way you can kind of draw it out a little bit, but it is still a little annoying that you can still happen to like waste it, because you just happen to get a Brave Chain, which normally would be really good for damage, but because they're building Sigurd in this really weird way, it can just be like a negative thing. Again, not a bad skill, right? The damage is really good, the Guts is really good for keeping him alive, but it's just kind of lacking when you're kind of coming up against more modern servants. Then even the 3rd skill over here, I mean, I honestly think this one probably needs to get buffed next, because it's not bad, okay? Giving an ally 100% crit star generation, especially if you give it to yourself, can really make that quick card pop off. And he can actually drop a hefty amount of stars for himself, and then giving either himself or an ally debuff immunity for 1 turn is obviously really good. But it's the fact that like you gotta consider that like they're both 1 turn buffs and they're on a 5 turn cooldown, so they're down for a long time, so you won't see them for a bit. And the debuff immunity can be very, very good, something you might want to see for quite a while, just on the fact that like a lot of bosses like to debuff you with stuns and charms and all that annoying stuff, right? You don't want to have to be bogged down by all those debuffs. But then this could also make Sigurd like a very, very powerful kind of star gen in his own right, but it's kind of like missing that oomph, right? Like these are fine, they're very powerful, and if they want to keep these on 1 turns, that's absolutely fine, right? Like just keep them on 1 turns, and you know, don't make them like super, super broken. I would argue you could probably bring these both to 3 turns and he'd be absolutely fine. But then from there, honestly, if you make it like a targetable 30% battery, or God forbid even like a targetable 50% battery, or a self 50% battery for himself, it would make this guy so much better, because if it's 3 turns, he can just target it on himself, make himself a pretty effective star gen, make himself debuff immune for 3 out of 5 turns because of the cooldown, and then you give him like a 30 to 50% battery, and that just massively alleviates the burden that his arts cards are under, because these are under so much strain to be getting crits, because if you don't do that, you're not getting, you know, his NP back, right? And that's kind of like the saving grace for you know, Sigurd over here. He just recently got his NP buffed over on the NA version of the game because of the summer camp thing, and as you guys can see, this thing does a lot of damage. Like it hits really, really hard. You know, he's right under Musashi. You guys know that that is not bad to be right under Musashi, because Musashi also does an absolute dump truck amount of damage. And I mean, he especially has a pretty decent damage mod in dragons, because dragons aren't exactly uncommon. And then you look at the gap between these people, but then it's kind of like, then you see like, well, why do people prefer to use like Bedivere or like Roland? Well, for one, someone like Bedivere, the reason like why even with Sigurd's like really, really strong NP and his very good damage mod, and even the ability to like kind of keep the enemy in check, it comes down to like kind of a lack of consistency And the fact that Sigurd is just kind of like a one-pump chump. Bedivere's been built in a way that, A, if you rolled on any of the banners where Bedivere, I know he's story logged, but if you rolled on any of those banners, he's doing comparable damage, right? He's only like 200 behind Sigurd over here if you're able to snag this guy at NP5. But then two, all of like Bedivere's buffs are like built to last, right? And he has like a little bit of party utility and stuff like that. It makes him like really easy to throw in the teams, and it makes him just a very solid option to bring. Roland recently released just kind of slams everything in the entirety of the game. And like Roland's a little bit of a different case because he's also got like some one-turn stuff, but those are on like really low cooldown, so it kind of makes him a little more enjoyable to use. And if you got him like NP2 or 3, his damage is starting to get comparable to Sigurd's NP1 damage anyway. And then this is like something you could more get consistently, where you got to keep in mind that while Sigurd can hit this, it's only while this buff is up, right? It's only while you have this, meaning he, like, especially right now in the NA version of the game, he can do that once every 7 turns. And then at least on the JP version of the game, at best case scenario, it's down to like 3 times every 6 turns, right? At the very least, if you can kind of space out the damage. But that's kind of the problem that I think I and a lot of people have with Sigurd, is just that, like, you know, his skills are really lacking those extra pieces. Like, he's kind of lacking in things. It can be hard to get his NP because so much weight is put behind those arts cards. And while they tried to make him like a star gen in some way, because they gave him decent star gen, a decent quick card, and a passive buff to his quick card, and all of this, they really tried to make him a decent star gen, but it's just not quite enough to make it like consistent to getting these arts crits, especially because they didn't give him star weight, right? If they gave him star weight, it'd be a little bit easier for him, because while as a Saber, his natural star weight's pretty good, you set him up next to 2 casters, and I mean, both of those Merlins are probably going to just steal all the stars for themselves anyway. So should you roll specifically for Sigurd? No, I don't think you should be rolling specifically for Sigurd. If anything, you're rolling on that banner because you want Emiya. I think Emiya, who I'll probably talk about tomorrow, is going to be the prize servant to get on the banner. And if you happen to have gotten Sigurd and you're watching the video because of that, I mean, he is really cool lore-wise. I wouldn't discount him for that. But as far as getting usage out of him, you're probably not going to break him out very much, because even like wanting to use another one pump chump servant, right? Like Musashi is a servant that also has like a 1-turn buff for her like Buster Mana Burst. But as you guys can see, Musashi almost makes it borderline worth it with the level of ridiculousness that she's able to hit. Plus, she also puffs up with this Pierce invincibility. So like, not only does she have like really good special damage mods for beating annoying bosses, she pierces invincibility, which is nice for all of the bosses that have either invincibility or dodge, but then she also just yeets all of their buffs off as well. It's like, she's absolutely insane. She actually has something to actually gen her own NP by doubling her hits. Like, she actually kind of has what you could maybe call, and I use this term loosely, like a pseudo battery, because her arts cards, especially with the crit, with that double hit skill up, it just might as well be like 100% battery. Like, you might as well just say charge your NP to full, because it's absolutely insane. But let me know what you guys think of Sigurd in the comments down below, and let me know if this video sounded any better or worse than the last videos. I'm trying to make do with as best as I can over here on vacation, although we may have a solution incoming tomorrow. I would look forward to tomorrow's video, because a very generous viewer has assisted me in like looking for a new mic to try to use with my computer and everything, and he has definitely helped me get all hooked up and everything. So the day after this goes up, I think that'll be Tuesday, should be like when everything is back to normal. Look forward to that. And yeah, we also got to give that guy a lot of praise for basically trying to save the channel while we're over here on vacation. So yeah, with all that being said, make sure you leave a like, make sure you subscribe for that daily FGO content. And with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace late, guys. Oh, and before I go, let me know how you guys feel about this, if this actually sounded better or worse. Yeah, just I do want to actually make sure, I actually want to know if it's better or worse. If you prefer it, not prefer it, let me know, because I'm trying to make do with the best of what we got while we're on vacation. But now you guys have a nice, you have a nice day. I'm out of here, guys. Bye.